capture some fresh energy within the program, and I think change could be good in a lot of ways. But the continuity, of the main pieces like Coach Riley, Coach Land, and us as position coaches, outside of a few guys that we added, I think will play tremendous dividends.
How much is that when it comes to those fourth quarter things? Obviously, it feels like such a small margin, but it also seems like in some regards it's like a cultural, it gets in your head after a while. How difficult is it to sort of iron out that last step?
Yeah, it's really the hardest step and the biggest hurdle. Because part of it is mental, the other part is physical. And I think, you put the guys in these situations over and over, but it's different when you get in those situations on the field. So you're trying to callous your mind for those situations, but the way that you train and the way that you prepare within the meeting room, I think is really the biggest thing. So, anticipating what you're going to get in these situations, and then when you get in these red area goal line situations, you may get some shifts, some motions, and but it's going to come down to the same thing. So no matter where the ball is at, being prepared for those moments mentally and physically, trusting your training, and that goes back to all the work that you're doing right now. We're winning games right now, in my opinion. So we'll continue to focus on those things and, breed confidence within them about how we prepare them. And I feel confident that obviously Coach Riley and Coach Land and us as position coaches will have a good plan for that.
How has Coach Bowden impacted your coaching? Coach Riley said last week, a lot has come off his plate. He's been able to focus more on football than he has in a really long time. How impactful has that staff been to your offseason?
Obviously tremendous. When you have, high quality people like Chad, Trey, Max, down the line, and the job that, that all the other people in that area do for us, it's a big deal. And so for me, I think it starts with Coach Riley, Coach Land, the coordinators, and then it just kind of trickles down. But, having a plan, being aggressive and executing that plan, I think it falls on the whole organization to be able to, follow the plan and leadership, whether it's recruiting, whether it's administrative, whether it's practice schedules, whether it's details. And, I think collectively we've spent a lot of time together since Chad and his staff has been here, and everybody's had a little bit of a voice in things that we do, but ultimately I think it just comes to everybody being on the same page. The vertical alignment in my mind is really big, and I think that Chad's been able to help provide some of that. And I think Coach Lincoln's Riley is one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. So you put that much brain power in one room, you never know what you may come out with. So it's been really good so far.
How long did it take for Chad to get dialed in with what you're looking for from a recruit? When we're talking about high school players.
Yeah, I think not very long, because I feel like his mind's always going. I don't know if he sleeps at night, because he's always focused on what's next and what's best, for our team. And so, we get along really well because he's very transparent. I'm very transparent about what we want, what we're looking for. And it's been really good for, I think, us as, a whole coaching staff, but individually for me, because once we identify him, I'm going to do everything I can in my power to build relationships and organically and, get into ball and really go after him and recruit him. And obviously this is, the best place in the country that you can get an education and play college football. So, that part's easy, but the relationship piece, the camaraderie within the staff, recruits, families, people outside the program can notice those things, and I think it's been a mesh of that, in the last 6 months.
You're trying to set the tone for the offseason. Coaches all get together to talk about, what we're going to tell the team. How much are you guys deciding to do? We're talking about how much you harp on maybe the fourth quarter situations versus handle it in a different way. Are you bringing up what happened at Maryland?
Me personally, no. That's kind of a program thing that I'm sure that Coach will hit on. I'm really just trying to focus on being the best we can be in this day, focused on the details. And I think when you focus on the details, understanding the scheme, and really understanding the why. In the second year in Coach Land's scheme, our players are have a much greater understanding about, everything that we want to do, but the strengths and the weaknesses of every scheme, and while we're running it, what situations we're running it. Is it for run? Is it for pass? Is it for situational football? And I feel like that's where you make the biggest strides. And improvement is more in how you do those things than just focusing on one situation, because games are won and lost in a whole bunch of different situations. And even when you get to, the last play of the game and those last 2 minutes that we may have come up short in, there were a lot of things games previous to that put you in those situations. So the better that we can be consistently, the better we'll be able to close out games and finish those things when we have those opportunities.
Coach, can you give us a breakdown of who's competing at the nickel spot? I'm sorry if you
No, it's a lot of guys, and every guy we're trying to train in multiple positions. So it's not just like it's one guy, but you have some of the young guys. But from an older guy perspective, Prophet Brown has been a position of versatility for us last year. He'll continue to be that. Then you add some of the new guys we got on the roster, in particular, some of the young guys have done a really good job from, Alex Graham, James Johnson, Longstreet's been in there. We got a couple safeties that pop in there at times, and we have some corners that we train. So we want to train every player at two positions, so we have position versatility when we get into sub packages and whatever coach name. And we decide as a defensive staff. So it's kind of by committee right now. That's one position that we have to kind of solidify as we move forward. But we feel good about the transition that we're making today.
And I know you're really high on D. Reddick, first year guy. So we'll see what happens. But just what's been impressive to you about him?
He loves football. At a different level. He's a high level competitor. And he's such a good person, and so grateful for the opportunity to be here at a place like USC, and coming from Georgia to being in the state of California. I think he's just embracing everything right now, soaking it all in. So it'd be good to see him get out here and compete with some of our other guys, because he was not here in the spring. He just enrolled this summer, so he's still learning, and he's really excited for the opportunity. So he's awesome. Thank you.
Coach, how much more is on the menu when you have a defensive line that can get home with 4 for you guys on the back end?
Yeah, it opens up a lot. One, from a run fit perspective, and if you look at, some of the guys, I thought we improved tremendously on tackling last year, and we still have a ways to go, but some of the plays that Jalen and Kamari and Keely and Greedy Vance and Jacoby Covington made on the perimeter, we may not be making some of those plays, hopefully, right? And then the other thing is just it comes down to pass coverage. Ultimately, we got to keep the ball out of the deep part of the field and be able to, run and hit and be competitive in the deep part of the field. And I think the best thing for that is a good pass rush and affecting the quarterback. And sometimes it's not always about sacking the quarterback or hitting the quarterback as much as it is affecting the quarterback. So the more that up front in the front seven that that we're able to affect the quarterback, it definitely makes our job easier, and it all starts up front for every football team. And Coach Henderson, Coach Newell, Coach Scott, along with our recruiting staff, done a tremendous job of adding depth and talent, within the trenches. So I think it'll help us tremendously, especially when you get into obvious passing situations where you need to affect the quarterback, and allows you to maximize coverage and do a little bit more in the back end. So I'm excited, to see how we can put it all together.
What's the most important thing you're looking for in that nickel position? It's a very crowded and competitive position. What is the one thing above all, besides consistency, probably, that you want in that?
When we recruit in the secondary, we want guys with versatility. So you may see guys that play corner, play nickel, play safety, that can play nickel. But the biggest thing is you have to have the ability to play man-to-man, have to have the ability to play zone, and ultimately you have to be a really good tackler, because you could be in run-fit situations where you're fitting inside of the box. If not, the ball's going to be on the perimeter a lot, and you have to be able to address those blocks. So somebody that has speed and athleticism, but also has enough physicality to take on blocks and tackle the ball on the perimeter. Yeah, we had previous relationship with Jason, but man, what he was able to do as a freshman, he loves ball. He's an ultimate competitor. And obviously his skill set for playing the position is great, but it's more about his mental makeup, the type of kid he is. He's overcome a lot to be here, and so we want to support him in all those things. But from the day that he got here, it seemed like he had been on the team for a year already. Just a very infectious personality, works his butt off every day. So I think it didn't take long for the players on our team to really see his mentality, the work ethic that he has, and obviously how good of a guy he is. And he's investing in our young players. He's leading and doing everything right. So we're really excited to have him. In Kennedy, we had a lot of experience at safety last year. We added Bishop. Really excited about Christian Pierce. And then after that, we really don't have a lot of guys with playing experience, but we like all of our young guys and, highly competitive there. So he just provides an extra layer of a guy who's ready to come in and play. Tremendous skill set, twitchy, athletic, explosive, really physical. So we're excited about, the traits. But as a football player, very, very intelligent, loves football. A lot like, Kamari, where he's very quiet, reserved, and then when he plays, he has another switch. So he had experience playing as a freshman at Notre Dame last year. So I'm looking forward to seeing him this training camp fit into the scheme. All the players love him as well. Good person, great energy. But he's a football guy, and I think he's going to be one of those guys, a lot like Christian, that plays physical. That it'll be fun to watch him play. And then you kind of tear into there with some of the young guys like, Gallegos and Isaiah Rubin, and then obviously the freshmen that we've added that can play a lot of positions and do a lot of things well.
Obviously, there's.
How big was Chad's endorsement when it came to Kennedy and bringing him in, and obviously having some familiarity with him?
Yeah, I think obviously it helps when you know somebody. It creates some comfortability, But it was really just us diving into football. He wasn't really into all of the glitz and glam or all of the fancy restaurants and seeing LA. He wanted to spend his time on football. So as a coach, for me personally, who coaches him, that's the most intriguing thing that you get on a visit. When somebody's like, hey, Coach, I'm good. I don't want a photo shoot. I don't want to do anything. Let's just talk ball. So we spent his whole visit outside of eating dinner and him resting on ball. And I think, he's the right fit. From a coach's perspective, we're always looking for guys who fit what we want to do. And in our system, we want smart, intelligent players that play, safety and nickel and even corner. And so he fit that mold with me and Coach Lynn. And then I think it was a good fit for him, being back on the West Coast and having an opportunity to come in and contribute immediately with something, that we wanted to get from him and that he wanted from us. So it's been awesome to have a chance to be around him so far.
Okay, thank you, Coach. That's all we have time for.